Hey, Jay, good to talk to you.
Hey,
Good to see you guys. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Well, I want to show your trailer for your film in a second, but tell us what it's about.
So, A Hard Place is basically about a group of criminals on the run in the woods. They end up in the middle of an ancient feud, kind of a Hatfield McCoy type feud between creatures that rule the day and like monsters that rule the night. So it's basically, kind of criminals versus monsters, stuck in the middle of a big battle, action, comedy, extravaganza. It's fun stuff.
Before we take a look at the trailer for the film, I want to give our audience a taste of it because we interview indie filmmakers like yourself. Our audience isn't always aware of those movies, so we want to give them a little bit of a taste. But what was one of the biggest challenges, and how did you like expand the budget to make it look more epic?
So the one thing that you can really do to on a smaller budget to increase your scope, like it's all about locations. So like I found a very affordable farmhouse in Ohio that sat on 50 acres. It was this giant farmhouse, and just that innate production value on that property was worth a lot. And then I spent a little bit of extra money to shoot the movie anamorphic to give it a little more scope, and that's the big thing. And then I've also, as an independent filmmaker, I'm somebody who I always bite off a little more than I can chew. So A Hard Place is very very ambitious for its budget.
Well, they say that the two things that can add production value are cast and location.
Yeah.
The two things. A location can really that's why so many people like to shoot in New York. New York becomes a character in the movie.
Yeah, absolutely. And here, I was going for kind of a Southern comfort vibe. So we shot in Ohio in the winter. The leaves are off the trees. It's kind of bleak. It really added to the feel and the tone of the movie.
All right, well, let's actually show the trailer and then we will continue the conversation. Here we go. 98 seconds. Let's hit it.
This is gonna work out for us. And the best part is that no one gets hurt.
We need to find somewhere to lay low. Somewhere off the grid.
Let's go. I don't want to get mixed up in whatever state we're in, Chainsaw Massacre.
what the hell?
Nobody wander off alone.
Xenia!
They're coming for us.
Y'all want to get out of here?
Six criminals on the run.
What are you?
Looks like you found yourself caught smack dab right in the middle of an old-fashioned feud.
Trapped between the creatures that roam the night and the monsters that rule the day.
Where are you gonna go? Where?
You rip them limb from limb!
A Hard Place.
Nice. I'm getting like Southern Gothic vibes out of it.
Yeah, totally. That's one of the big inspirations. Yeah. I had the Hatfield McCoy thing. There's a little bit of Sam Raimi mixed in. I'm a big Walter Hill fan. So like the Southern comfort vibe is like really strong in there.
Yeah. Tell us, like, in terms of effects, where do you stand on digital versus practical, and what'd you use for your film? Combination of both, or?
So there is a slight combination of both. I would say it's 90 to 95% practical effects. I believe, especially on a lower budget movie, lower budget digital effects are just horrible. And like people can be a little bit more forgiving if you have kind of a janky practical effect, as long as it's splattery. But the effects guy that I work with, Robert Bravo, I've worked with him for years, and he can do so much with so little. We had a little tiny budget. We had 6 or 7 full-bodied, in the plant suits. We had another 7 of the other creatures, and then dozens of gags. And he pulled it off pretty much as a one-man band. He had one assistant. But my take though is I feel like CG. I like it when it's used to augment practical stuff. For example, the what were they called? The Reapers in Blade 2, when the mouse would split open, and it was practical up until the digital tongue or whatever,
right?
Stuff they actually couldn't do. Or
right.
In our case, we're shooting very fast, and we had to put these people in suits very fast, and there's a lot of action, so tears would happen or creases, and then I'd go back my visual effects artist would go in and digitally remove those stitches or those rips or whatever, or fix the face a little bit, stuff like that. I think that's cool.
Is your use of CG pre-planned, or is a lot of it kind of okay, I think I know how we can do this in post?
Yeah, a lot of it was, I think we'll do this in post. And then some of the monster fixes, of course, weren't planned. It's just, fix what kind of didn't work out on set. But then stuff for example, we didn't have an armorer. So, we're not using real guns, not real blanks. So all that's digital, all the flash and stuff like that. I pretty much refuse to use digital blood squibs or the digital hits in the background. I just think they always look goofy. So any squibs were all practical, and we just did, instead of explosive squibs, we'd use pneumatic, so that it's air pressure through a CO2 cartridge.
We've got over 2,000 people watching live.
Wow.
We've got a lot of questions in our chat. Before we go to chat questions, two questions I have for you is one, when is the movie out? Is it out?
Yeah, it just came out Tuesday. So what we did on Apple TV and Amazon Prime Video. What we did though is, prior to this, we did about a 4-month run in independent theaters all around the country. Nice. And drive-ins. So I've played in drive-ins in Florida and Georgia and Indiana, and we're doing one in California coming up. So kind of a little mini road show. And then released on streaming just this week on Tuesday.
Great. So streaming and VOD. And I want to start asking this of all the filmmakers that come on. What is one tip, as from an indie perspective? What is one tip you can give? One thing. Let's say your best friend is going to make a movie. What is the one piece of advice you give that friend?
So it would be more a piece of information than advice. I would say set your expectations. Because I've been making movies a long time. A Hard Place is about the 95th feature I've produced. I've directed maybe 20. So I've done a lot, and I've distributed most of them. I own a lot of them. And the thing is, in movies, whether it's big or small, most fail. They fail, or they break even, or they make a tiny bit of money. In all likelihood, you're not going to make your Reservoir Dogs. You're not going to make your Clerks. You're going to make a little movie. It might make a little money. It might not. Set your expectations and keep making movies. Don't put all your eggs in one thing and think this is going to set you up, because 90% of us, it doesn't.
Let's go to comments here, and we'll start at the top.
All right, Patrick Lemire reminds me of the kid in Super 8 seeing the train yelling production values. Christopher Moonlight Productions, Mr. Horton is an indie superhero. Hale, can you talk about your touring your movie with Cine Roadshow?
So I met this guy, Peter Higuchi, online. It was his idea to do the thing, because what happened in COVID, there was a lot less studio, output. So there were a lot of theaters, especially smaller independents, that were starving for content. So he got the idea, and usually independent people, we would go to these theaters and we would have to 4-wall or pay them to get in there. Most won't even be interested in doing rev splits. But he was in this market, maybe they would. So, he took his small movie, started contacting owners directly, and eventually talked a few of them into doing, 50-50 rev splits on premieres. And then if the premiere goes well, then they'll book you like for 2 or 3 more dates the next week. And if those go well, they'll expand you from there. And so that was kind of the idea of the road show. So I did that for 4 months. And then to get into the drive-ins, we basically bum rushed our way into this drive-in convention where a bunch of drive-in owners meet every year in Florida. And, I think I paid, $400 or $500 for the booth as an exhibitor. And we went in there and basically just started pitching our movies to all these drive-in owners. And that's how we booked it. And there were no other independent filmmakers in there. So it's like, you have to force your way in sometimes. There's it's not the road might not be traveled. You have to kind of make your own breaks.
More questions here. Really good questions.
All right. How did you, from ADLS 24, excuse me, how did you find working with crews from Ohio? What are some differences they have from California professionals?
I honestly wish I could tell you, but most of my crew was people I'd worked with. So my DP came from Idaho. I guess our AD and second AD and Crafty were all local. But pretty much everybody else I brought in. But what was there, they were great.
All right. Mike Glanville. I'm a big fan of 80s schlock movies, both action and horror. I'm thrilled by this trailer.
It's very I'd say late 80s, 90s, maybe even early 2000s schlocky. Somebody said Sci-Fi Channel movie the other day. I was like, oh, I could go with that.
ADLS 24. What was the process behind the writing of the screenplay? Was this an idea you and your co-writer came up with together, or was it a script that you came across and added your personal flair?
No, so this was my script. I actually wrote the first version of this over 20 years ago when I was in college. Right after college, right after I made my first movie. And it was originally vampires versus werewolves. And I was like, oh, it's so brilliant. Nobody's ever done a big action movie with vampires and werewolves. Next year, Underworld came out. And and I just, and plus it was kind of big in scope. I didn't have that kind of money. So I just kind of shelved it. And then I did another monster movie a couple of years ago called Craving, and had a really good experience with that. And I was like, I want to do another monster movie. I want to do something bigger. I remembered the script. I was like, oh, I should take this, update the monsters. So I did that. And then I had also had a really good experience collaborating with another writer for the first time on Craving. So I decided to try that. And so I gave it to Michael J. Epstein. He did a pass on it, created some of the new elements, added a lot of the humor that wasn't there. And then I did a final pass and put it out.
Yeah. Good thing you saved those floppy disks.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, Solomon Thorne. Greetings, Sir Jay. Cool trailer. What was your process of directing the film?
Oh man. So for direct, so I'm going to kind of focus on the acting because it's what has become the most important thing to me. When I first started directing, I was like, oh, how, the shots and, tell the story. And I didn't really know how to communicate with actors, but over the last 5-6 years, I feel like I've really blossomed there. So I really like working with large groups of actors and learning how to learning how to work with somebody who uses one process with another process and then putting them together is just, it's really exciting. So I typically if we're separated by distance, I start doing small Zoom rehearsals, usually in groups of 2 or 3. This was a very large cast, so it would have been impossible to put them all on a 50-person Zoom, and kind of work the characters out through that.
And then from ADLS 24, once again, legendary scream queen Felissa Rose is in your feature. How did you go about casting her, and what was her past experience in the genre did you look to utilize?
So Felissa is she's a dream. So I had worked with her on my last movie, Craving, and basically Kevin Caliber, who also produced and starred in Craving with me, was friends with her, as was our special effects artist. So there was kind of a second degree of separation there. So basically just called her. But I mean, Felissa she is a ray of sunshine. She's just like the nicest human being you will ever meet. And she's so good. And you know what happens, you know, I think with a lot of scream queens, especially from the 80s, they get kind of pigeonholed and they don't get to break out very often. So like when you give someone like Felissa a role like she has in this, where she actually gets to display some of her range, she gets to go a little over the top, she gets to get emotional. And like, I think it's one of her best performances.
Well, I got to say, Jay, thank you so much for spending time with us. The movie is out now, A Hard Place, Amazon, Apple, look for it. It's out, and congratulations on the film. Really appreciate you coming by and spending time with us today.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.